Hi, hello, welcome. My name is Sanelsa, or CY for short. I'm on Instagram at CY Designs, that's SEEWHY, design spelled regularly, and I'm here today to teach Hand Lettering 101. I'm really excited because I just got done a one-on-one lesson with a new student and want to record what we went over today. So here we go. All right, so let's get started. What I normally do is I take a survey to understand where you're coming from and what to focus on in each lesson. Since this is virtual, I won't do that so much, but feel free to let me know if you are completely new to this, if you're a total beginner, or if you have had some practice and just need some more lessons and direction and guidance and practice or guides and drill sets. Just let me know. If you are learning the difference between hand lettering and calligraphy and typography today, that's fine too. Let me know. We'll be going over those things specifically in the introduction, the basics of hand lettering. So I'm going to go over the materials that I love to use. I use these a lot more often than others, but of course there are so many different tools you can use for hand lettering. So I have a dual brush pen here. This is the Tombow, which a lot of people love. It has a brush tip, that felt tip on one side that is pressure sensitive. So with hand lettering, you're going to get some really good thin and thick strokes from that dual brush, that brush tip. For the nib tip, you're going to get one monoline brush stroke, or pen stroke, all one weighted line. Okay, so this brush allows you the option of doing 2 in 1. I use pencils a lot when I want to just sketch. I use Sharpie when I want to do a little bit of calligraphy, and again, this is another fine point brush where you can get a heavy or a thick line, but it's not pressure sensitive. And then micron. This pack has the number 1, the number 3, and the number 5. So that just is showing how large the tips of these pens are. 5 being the largest and 1 being the smallest. This is 3 right in the middle. And there are other sizes. I normally only use the 3 and the 5 for lettering, so things like envelopes I use that on. I don't use this number 1 often at all. It's good for corrections, but I don't keep it on hand. Normally for lettering, I'll use the number 3 and number 5 for my thick and thin brush strokes. So those are for my calligraphy. Calligraphy just meaning that it's not real calligraphy, it is a hand lettered, hand drawn approach to creating a calligraphy like, style of word. So in my classes, I normally send some sheets before our lesson. This one has general notes, and it has those questions at the very beginning asking what hand lettering is, what calligraphy is, what typography is. Again, I poll everyone beforehand, but we'll be going over that today. There's some worksheets that I send. This I got free from Michael's, but I like to go over the downstroke and the upstroke, the 7 basic strokes, and then our alphabet eventually, as well as some tracing paper. So that is what I normally recommend for class or for each lesson. And I share my resources that I was first introduced to hand lettering with. This book I found at a gift shop, and I loved it immediately. I don't use it much for practice, but it has a lot of great inspiration in it. So I mentioned using a pencil. This book has a lot of ideas that you can be inspired by. It shows how you can create your own layouts and your own styles of lettering, kind of from start to finish. It also breaks down the difference between typography, calligraphy, and lettering. So I went over that with Gabby today. And it has a lot of just technical terms more materials and illustrations that are very helpful for learning calligraphy. So I love this book. It's a great guide. Again, I don't use it for practice as much as I should. This shows, from sketch to final version of your design, what you can do. There's another example here. Lots and lots of examples in this book, which is why I love it. And it has space in the back, as you see, that I've never used. I've had this book for I'd say more than 5 years. I really need to check, but it's a great tool for practicing hand lettering and creating your own styles and your own signs and designs. And I came across hand lettering while studying and being fascinated with art. I started to study type, and I didn't realize typography was a thing, that there are people out there that really study letter forms and things like that. And so I just started to love it even more. I was working at an art studio at the time, and the studio owner gave me this book. And so it's another guide that I've used. It has similar breakdowns of the technical parts of lettering, so materials that you can use, how you can create different styles just by changing the angle of your letter, patterns. It talks about groups, just a lot of technical things that I found helpful. And again, I don't use this book much for practice, which it has the space for, but I do use it when I need reference. So those are some materials and just helpful resources that I had, and we'll go ahead and get started. Definitions. Hand lettering. That's the first question I asked before. If you know what hand lettering is a form of drawing to create decorative letters. Drawing is a key word there for me that I like to make sure people understand, that hand lettering is a form of drawing. That's why I love it so much. I don't think I have the patience for traditional calligraphy yet, but I do love to draw words. Okay? So the key in brush lettering, and again, brush meaning you're using that tip, that is pressure sensitive, is thick downstrokes and thin upstrokes. So from our guide, I can show you what I mean by thick and thin. Alright, so your brush, and with these brushes, you want to make sure, or these pens, you want to make sure that your brush is not pointing straight up and down like that. This, you're going to want to hold at a 45-degree angle against your paper. That'll give you the best angle so that when you apply pressure, you can get those thin and thick upstrokes and downstrokes. So see that I'm pressing down and I'm getting really thick strokes as I move my brush down that line. Okay? For the thin strokes, right here, I'm just lightly placing my brush down and dragging it up. I'm not pushing down much, but I'm just dragging that pen up the page. So as you go up, you're just lightly applying pressure, or none at all, and carrying that pen across your paper. As you're coming down, you are pushing down on the tip of that pen. Alright, so that is the key. The very key thing to lettering in this style. Thick downstrokes and thin upstrokes. Alright? We're going to move on to the definition of calligraphy. What is calligraphy? It is a form of handwriting where letters are made in a deliberate and rhythmic fashion. using a nib pen. So this box, this mysterious black box right here, was another gift. Well, it was a jewelry box originally, but I turned what's inside of it. I turned it into a place to hold my nibs that I don't use very often at all. But you'll see that there are several different tips. Just gonna grab one, and it does go in here. And so this is a traditional type of nib that you would dip into ink. So something like that. This jar here has ink. I haven't opened it in so long that I don't even think I can do an example right now. But you dip this nib in ink and you would write with it, okay? That is what calligraphy is, the practice of hand lettering with these materials specifically. Or a brush, but same thing. You're using ink and a tool to create letters in that rhythmic form. It's not drawing the letters, it's handwriting the letters. And you see the difference? The tools. A brush pen and a nib. Lastly, typography. What is typography? It is the style and appearance of printed words. So printed is the key here. So typically it's created digitally or with graphic design, and it's printed on a computer. Simple as that. That is typography. It's the study of type. Okay? And so those are the 3 different definitions, and I'm just excited to share what's next. So, terminology. Introduction. All right, the basics. We have 3 lines on the sheet, the handout that I give, but on the screen you'll see that there are 5 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? The top line on the screen is the ascender height. That is above the cap height. So, meaning the cap height is the height of a capital or an uppercase letter. The ascender height is that line, and you can put a little dash on your paper above your base or your cap height if you need to, but that's just going to show where your letter is like a D that has a stem, where that's going to go to if you want to do a nice flourish design. Just goes up to that ascender height line, okay? And then back down. The cap height is the height, that line, the height of your uppercase letter. That median, and it's higher on the screen than a typical median line. Median would be right in the middle between the cap height and the baseline normally. And that line just shows where your lowercase letters would, the height of those. That's where the top of those letters would stop. Then the baseline is the very bottom of the line. Those letters, any letters. Okay. The height between your baseline and that median line would be your X height, the height of any lowercase letter, but just X in general. And then your descender line drops down past the baseline. So that line denotes letters like Y and G, where you do have a descending loop. Comes down and it drops to the line of your descender height. Okay, so those are the basic terms for those lines on your page. It's going to help you make sure you are doing your best with keeping your forms, in the right structure to create your letter forms. There are more terms, just like more than are even necessary. I found out about all of these just by accident, but so they're not used in my everyday language or even when I'm thinking about lettering, but These terms are helpful to know if you are wanting to study typography or graphic design. It's what separates different styles of lettering and type and fonts from each other. So things to know if you're really interested, you can go deeper into those, but this is just the intro. It's completely not needed. Alright, so there are 7 basic strokes. 7 foundational strokes that form all of your lowercase letters, okay? Let me get my sheet out and go through them one by one. Right here. First one you have is the entrance stroke. That entrance stroke, you'll see, connects most strokes together. So a lot of times it's the end of one letter and enters the next letter. So I'm on my nib side, but starting at the bottom, that baseline, and just curving up, starting at the bottom and curving up to that median line. So just curving up. If you're using your brush tip, which you probably should be, you're just lightly applying pressure, or none at all. Just lightly putting the tip of that brush down and lightly curving up to the median line. So you can drill that all the way to the end. And take your time, just lightly going through that. The second basic stroke is your underturn, okay? So you're starting with a downstroke from the median line, that middle line, just applying pressure straight down, lightly lifting, and curving your pen up. So you'll see this shape in U's and similar letters. Even letters like D kind of have a partial understroke in there. So you just lightly bring it up. But you start off heavy, lightly turn, and bring your brush up. So you just want to slowly practice that until you gain control of how much pressure you can apply as you do these drills. All the way to the end. Okay? Then you have your underturn, which is the very opposite of your overturn. You're just starting at that baseline lightly with a upstroke. So not much pressure, and then curving and coming down. Lightly up, curving strong, down. Lightly up, curving strong, coming down. Lightly up, curving strong, coming down. Just do that all the way till the end of your line. Okay, next you have your compound turn, meaning compound 2 and 1, both of them together. Okay, you have both of these. So we started with the entrance stroke, then you had that underturn, then you had the overturn. Number 4 is both of these. Okay, both of these are compound, just the opposite versions of each other. So this one you're starting with the downstroke heavy, lightly coming up, turning and coming down strong again. Downstroke, up, down. Downstroke, up, down. This one here you're doing the upstroke first, just lightly from the baseline, curving up, curving back down, heavy, and lightly back up. Upstroke up, curving down heavy, and then lightly back up. And the same until you get to the end. Okay? So you can just drill that until you get to the very end. Take your time, work on that control. Lightly up, heavy down, lightly up. Lightly up, heavy down, lightly up. Lightly up, heavy down, lightly up. This one is the opposite. Down, up, down, Down, up, down, down, up, down. And the tripod is a little in my way, so don't mind the little hiccups along the end. So your next basic stroke is your ascending stem loop, number 5. Okay, so you have that middle line that you're starting from, lightly going up, curving, coming down heavy with the downstroke. Lightly coming up, curving, downstroke. Lightly curving up, downstroke. Lightly up, curving, downstroke. All the way to the end again. You'll notice these I mentioned are like a D. So I'll do an example here. We just lightly come up, down, and then kind of almost do an oval to make a D. So just lightly coming up, down, lightly coming up, down. With calligraphy, if you have a brush that you can't apply pressure, what I normally do is I just draw that monoline like in the same stroke that makes up the letter, and then I would draw a second line, right? And then fill it in with your ink. So it appears to be a regular ascending line with a light upstroke and a heavy downstroke, but it's calligraphy because you didn't really create it with calligraphy. You drew it, okay? So that's what I call calligraphy, and a lot of people call calligraphy. So number 6 is your descending stem loop. So that is the 6th basic stroke, where it's pretty much the opposite again, where you're coming from the middle but going down with the downstroke and lightly curving up. Heavy downstroke, lightly picking up. Heavy downstroke, lightly picking and curving up. And just doing that, drilling it until you get to the very end of your line. Okay, so you're just practicing and getting that muscle memory going. The very last basic stroke is your oval, number 7, lucky number 7. Okay, so I call this 1 o'clock typically. So it's not at the top, the center, but to the right more. So I'm just lightly going up with the light upstroke and curving with pressure coming down, and then lightly back up. Lightly up, curving down, and lightly back up. So you're just going to do that oval, and of course this looks like an O. So you can make O's like this. You can partially make C's like this. So if you don't close the C, just going to lightly do that all the way to the end. Starting at 1 o'clock, lightly coming around. 1 o'clock coming down. Heavy, down, and then up. Downstroke, curve, back up. So there are 7 basic strokes. So something like an A, you'll notice, is mostly an oval. But then you do a downstroke and an exit to get an A. You saw the D before. And E is similar. I mentioned the C where it's almost an oval, but instead of coming back up, you just exit. And E is a little loop, but then an oval with an exit. So you'll learn how to create all of your letters with these basic strokes. And we'll do that in the next lesson. We'll go over the different types of letters. There are 5 letter groups, which when I was learning hand lettering, I didn't know anything about, but when I started to share and teach hand lettering and do one-on-one lessons, I learned, oh, there are 5 letter groups. And you'll see one example of those letter groups right here. And this is the oval letter group. So the O, the E, and the C are part of the oval letter group. And so there are 4 others besides that oval letter group that exist for the rest of the alphabet. We'll learn how to connect those letters and create words, and then practice our numbers as well. So until next time, thank you for joining me today. Peace.